For centuries, the Church has made use of a series of meditative chants, antiphons, that focus on the names and attributes of God. Typically, these O antiphons, as they are called, would be sung in the week prior to Christmas Eve, before and after, and sometimes even through, the Canticle of Mary, the Magnificat, that passage from Luke's Gospel that is Mary's response to learning that she is about to become the Mother of God. We have a marvelous translation of these ancient texts as the verses of the preeminent Advent hymn, which is number 56 in your hymnal, O come, Emmanuel. However, a careful Wikipedia search will show that some of the richness of the ancient texts is missing from our 19th century translation. For the sake of fitting the bounds of rhyme and meter, and for our translation over the years, that translation has lost the nuance of words that today could feed us. The verse that begins, O wisdom from on high, masks the original words, O wisdom from the mouth of God. And when we sing, Who orderest all things mightily, we are hiding the ordering that comes with might and sweetness. One other loss in the translation happens in the first and last verses and the refrain. Besides teaching generations of choir children to sing Israel, our hymn uses language that promotes a hurtful and unjust understanding of the relationship of Jesus to the Jewish people. To ransom captive Israel suggests that Judaism is incomplete without the coming of the promised Messiah. This is an understanding that has been repudiated by the majority of Christians since at least the Second Vatican Council in the 1960s, and it's an understanding that feeds so-called dominionist theology, the idea that when Jesus returns in glory, the Jews who do not become Christians will be destroyed. Such a beautiful hymn. And the original text doesn't have those words. Other scholars have replaced those words to contain the hope for all of the world that we anticipate in the incarnate Word of God. O come, Emmanuel, and with your people always dwell, who mourn in mortal exile here until the Son of God appear. Rejoice, rejoice, Emmanuel shall come again, and with us ever dwell. David, the king, has a great idea. Having built for himself a luxurious dwelling place, should he not now build an even more luxurious place for God to dwell? The God who has, since Egypt and Sinai, traveled with the people in the Ark of the Covenant carried about in tent and tabernacle. And God rightly asks how a human can build anything that would contain that which is boundless. I will build you a house, he says, and today we hear of the house that God builds, a young woman who will be the mother of the Most High, the mother of God. For me and for many throughout time, this is a moment when the world stands still, a moment that defies my words. For that I need poets. The angel and the girl are met, says Edwin Muir, and the prophets, the prophet Mary, who travels on her own to visit her kinswoman Elizabeth, who is close to delivering her own miracle child, John the Baptizer. It is in that encounter where Elizabeth repeats the angel's greeting and calls her the mother of my Lord that Mary's spirit bounds out in song, in the song of praise and joy, the triumph song of the world being made new. Those things that were cast down are now being lifted up, the poor lifted up, the hungry filled, the promise of mercy. Words that Mary's son Jesus will echo when he makes his first public appearance at the synagogue in Nazareth, proclaiming that the Spirit of the Lord has come upon him to proclaim good news to the poor, release to the prisoners, to liberate the oppressed. In that astounding moment of beauty, in that ineffable mystery that we meet today in the angelic visit to the young girl of Nazareth, in all the contemplation about the heavenly encountering the earthly, what emerges from Mary's lips and from the lips of her child Jesus are the words of justice. And justice that implies some resistance that 3 years ago challenged us preachers to use some forbidden words in our preaching about an unmarried woman carrying a fetus beyond the imagination of those who are science-based, but certainly in the imagination of the evidence-based, the creator of all that is and all that shall be. Justice for those who are broken-hearted and vulnerable in all their diversity of humanity, the refugee, the captive, the othered of all communities, people of color, people of different ability, people of different sexuality, the transgendered, the cisgendered, to all who are still living blind in their entitlement. To all of us, Mary sings this song. These are forbidden words that we now imagine will be returned. Justice. Today, as our planet tilts the northern hemisphere the farthest from the sun, as we enter our darkest night, for the first time in hundreds of years, the conjunction of two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, will light up the southwestern sky after sunset. Today, our own bright stars of St. Mark's release the video they've prepared for Blue Christmas: music, word, prayer, light of hope and joy and expectation. The 7 O antiphons weave the names of God around the words of the Mother of God: Wisdom, Lord, Shoot of Jesse, Key of David, opening the door that can never be shut, releasing the prisoners and setting them free, Day Star, Ruler of the nations, God with us. The poet Malcolm Guite has a sonnet for each of the O antiphons, 2 of which we heard earlier this week in our slow church gathering. This is the one for the final antiphon. O come, Emmanuel, King and Lawgiver, come and save us. He too has found new expression to replace the old words. O long-sought witness for a world without, O secret seed, O hidden spring of light, come to us wisdom, come unspoken name, come root and key and king and holy flame, O quickened little wick so tightly curled, be folded with us into time and place, unfold for us the mystery of grace, and make a womb of all this wounded world. O heart of heaven beating in the earth, O tiny hope within our hopelessness, come to be born, to bear us to our birth, to touch a dying world with new-made hands, and make these rags of time our swaddling bands. Joy, hope, prayer, our souls proclaim the greatness of the Lord.